Okay, can we give a warm welcome to Representative Dan Crenshaw? All right, while he's walking up to the stage, and thank you, Mr. Crenshaw, for being here. I know it's a big effort on a Monday when you're flying into town from your district.
Good to see you.
So really appreciate it.
Of course, where would you?
Yeah, you can sit over there, whichever one you prefer. I am going to read the foreign policy plank from the Freedom Conservatism Statement of Principles, just to start our conversation off. We say, and it's number 9 of the 10, the shining city on a hill. American foreign policy must be judged by one criterion above all, its service to the just interests of the United States. Americans are safest and freest in a peaceful world, led by the United States, in which other nations uphold individual liberty and the sovereignty of their neighbors. Some people have complained that statement could encompass a lot of different philosophies. How do you read that, and what's your take on what should our philosophy be of foreign policy and national security?
Yeah, it's broad. You put me on the spot here. Look, I don't know. I'll just tell you how I would generally answer it. When you think about national security and foreign policy, you have to think about national security in terms of what the world really is, as opposed to what you wish it would be. I think a lot of people wrongly believe that defense literally means bringing all the troops home. Don't forward deploy anybody. Don't have relationships. Don't have alliances. There are entanglements. There are liabilities, and you can just defend your borders, and everything will be fine. But that's an unrealistic worldview, because it's not the real world. The real world is rather small. It's not large. It used to be large maybe 1,000 years ago, but it's been small for a long time, in the sense that the nearest the Russia-Ukraine war is a 10-hour flight. It's not a long ways away. Foreign policy should prioritize your national interests, and that's kind of the great debate in a democracy, is what includes your national interests, and that's where you get bogged down in a lot of messy details, I think, and differences. But for the most part, we would agree that we want prosperity to be one of our national interests. And then there's a question of whether foreign policy action X is furthering along that national interest, say it's prosperity. And again, you get bogged down into some really big differences here, where it all comes down to a different worldview premise. Because I would argue that if you don't basically lead and control and protect the global economy, your future prosperity is probably at risk. And others just don't believe that. So that's a problem. And I think that's at the heart of probably our national security debates these days.
I mean, you served as a Navy SEAL in some of the most dangerous places in the world. You serve on the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. How do those experiences shape your understanding of national security, and what should people know that you feel like they don't fully understand or appreciate about our situation in the world?
So specifically with Iraq and Afghanistan, there's been a real lack of understanding amongst the American public about what those deployments were really about. Even Iraq, Afghanistan should be a no-brainer. We were attacked. You go in. Now there's an open question of what you do on day 2 after you've beat the enemy, and it really only takes 1 or 2 days to beat the enemy in both of these cases. But do you want the enemy to reconstitute and operationalize once again? The answer is no. Well, then you need to build some capacity in the country. And that capacity can be labeled as nation building. It can also just be capacity building. Either way, I think the American public and too many politicians just deride these actions as just obviously and stupid in hindsight. So obviously dumb. Well, it's not so obvious. You're faced with a difficult choice every single day till 2, 3, 4, 5, and 20 years later. And 20 years later, we did come to a pretty good place where we didn't have any troops actually doing a lot of fighting, and a strategic air base in Bagram, close to important locations like China and Pakistan, and terrorist elements in Afghanistan. and just to give it up was pretty foolish. On Iraq, I at least want people to think of counterfactuals when they again just automatically assume that something doesn't make any sense, and maybe it still doesn't in hindsight, but the key word being hindsight. And again, the counterfactuals are, well, there's a pretty good chance that Iran would have sprinted towards a nuclear bomb in the early 2000s, and people forget that 2004, that's when the Ayatollah issued the decree to stop their nuclear weapons program. So like, why, is that just coincidence that we invaded a country based on WMD? No, it's not just a coincidence. And so it's important for people, I guess the lessons I'm trying to extrapolate from that is some kind of nuanced thinking on foreign policy issues as opposed to these like black and white answers that are just easier to say quickly on Twitter. And you hopefully you gain that if you actually deploy there, although I've seen plenty of people who've deployed to these places and still have zero amount of nuanced thinking in any of it. But that would be one thing, and we can blame our leaders a lot for most of these problems, because from Bush to Obama, nobody ever explained what they were doing there. Nobody ever explained, like, some kind of a grand strategy, some kind of just unpacking some layers of why it's important to have a forward presence abroad, why this American leadership here or there matters, why it's important to deploy and build capacity with partners there. You never heard a lot of explanations on this stuff, and so when there's a lack of leadership and explanations, just like Biden never explained why we're backing Ukraine. He's never actually explained it, and so he leaves it to the Trump administration to I think clean up as best they can, or at least I hope the best they can right now. And so people will fill that vacuum of lack of explanation with their own explanations that fit on a nice fit on the bumper sticker.
One of the things we've been talking about today, that's yours. One of the things we've been talking about today is what are the strongest critiques of freedom conservatism? And one we've talked about is the argument that freedom conservatism was too complacent about struggling communities that were left behind, and particularly places that maybe were manufacturing towns where the jobs were shipped to China. What's your sense of what our posture should be towards China? How concerned are you about China? Do we need to have an industrial policy to deal with China? Or can we deal with it purely through a free markets and pro-freedom approach? What's the right way to think about how do we take on China? I'm giving you all the easy ones.
Yeah, they're hour-long discussions. I don't know. I mean, I think our current posture against China, which is a pretty aggressive one, whether you're Democrat or Republican, is about the right one and about all you can do. I mean, you can't whistle past the graveyard and pretend like they don't want to completely unseat America as a primary superpower. They do. They have for a long, long time. And if I'm not sure what freedom conservatism says about this. I think we're trying to figure that out, right?
Right.
So I won't try to answer that question. I'll just say what I think we should be doing. I mean, on every space you have to compete. Now we can't out-subsidize them. That's not I don't think we can out-industrialize China. It's not possible. We can't spend that much money. And now but I'm not sure what the right solution is either. I mean, we face this problem. We talk about it in politics all the time. The Chinese are making inroads in Africa. It's like, well, what are you willing to do about it? I don't know. At least we're shifting focus towards the Western Hemisphere. And Chinese inroads in the Western Hemisphere. That at least seems like more like something we can still wrap our hands around. But even that, it's not so easy. We can complain all day about the Panama Canal, but American companies aren't putting bids on those contracts. So, are you going to make them put bids on the contracts? Are we going to vastly increase the size of our XM bank, or like what are we going to do? We could. What are we going to do about it? There just doesn't seem to be a lot of agreement on that. Because Americans. I don't know. It's over subsidizing, especially with something overseas, because that requires an explanation of how it benefits you back home. It just doesn't work, and especially in this political climate. Look, on defense, we have to keep investing in the right kind of capabilities, and I think when it comes to South China Sea and those kind of issues, I think we have to think outside the box a little bit. I've heard people complain that simultaneously complain that the Chinese are building more ships, but also that we need to cut our defense spending too. So I'm a little confused about that. But also I'm not as concerned that they can build a lot more ships, because that's not really the future of warfare. The future of warfare is what we're seeing in Ukraine, which is very much an unmanned killer drones and swarms of them that are cheap. That's the future of warfare for sure. Figuring out how to shoot missiles down with something that ideally costs less than the missile itself. That would be good. So that's just technological advances, and then making sure our Defense Department is properly suited to invest in those early and often, and be nimble about doing it. That's a hard problem to solve.
How confident are you that President Trump is going to midwife a good solution to the situation in Ukraine?
Well, I mean, he's in the unique position to be able to be successful in it, and so I think there's a lot of critiques on him right now, but the best we can hope for is that he's successful. So right now I'm in the let's just push for him to just be optimistic and be successful camp. I think that's the best position to be in, and again, he's in a unique position to be successful. You finally saw, even if it was a little too little, too late, escalation from the Biden administration and from Europeans in allowing weapons to be used against Russians in Russian territory. An increase in sanctions, turning the knobs up on that, and and you have Ukrainians actually taking Russian territory. That's been going on for a while. So the president isn't in a situation where he still needs Putin to come to the table, and I think that's where a lot of this excessive flattery has come from. Because how else? Well, I'm not sure how else to explain it. And second, you still need to do that because Putin does not want to come to the table unless you're willing to turn the screws up so high on him that he feels forced to. Now you're getting into more and more dangerous territory. I think Trump knows that the only way to get him to a negotiation table is this sort of flattery and nice talk that only he can pull off, to be honest. So
is that really true? I mean, a lot of people think the only way you get Putin to the table is by defeating him.
Yeah, well, it's a mix of both. That's what I said. Like, you'd have to turn the screws up a lot harder, and I don't see him willing to do that at the moment. I think he's trying it this way first, and if Putin wants to embarrass him and not let him and say it won't work, then now it'll be up to the president to get him to the table in a much harsher way. It was never going to be easy. I hope nobody told him it was going to be easy. So all we can do is cheer for his success at the moment. And here's what we should all say in order to cheer on his success. Look, I don't think President Trump would ever let himself be taken advantage of by a half-rate dictator like Putin. You got to speak to his future success, and I think for as long as I think that's our best bet right now.
You moving to a different part of the world, you were early in advocating for the cartels, the Mexican cartels, to be labeled as terrorist organizations. The administration is, I believe, making some moves in that direction. What is the situation on the border? How bad is the kind of quasi-military or paramilitary effort down there? What should people know about what's going on that they don't already?
Well, that they don't already. I mean, the cartels are effectively a terrorist insurgency operation that, you could. It's loose. Terrorist is loose. I actually didn't advocate for that. I was always on the fence on it because, like the first Trump administration was, they didn't do it. Why? Because rightfully worried about immigration fallout, because a bunch of people coming over the border can now say they're fleeing terrorists. So. First thing out of the gate, now the benefit of doing it is simply it's a shot across the bow. It's a message to cartels. That's about it. There's no those are the negatives. Those are the positives. There isn't some other magic box of government tools that come out when you label an organization as an FTO. You might have a longer sentence if you're caught, but you're already a cartel member. You're already going to have a life sentence. So it's a good. The positives are. It's a good shot across the bow. It shows the public that we're serious, shows the cartels that we're serious. It's time to do a lot more than just say that, though. I mean, we actually have to take some actions. Now, there's a whole long list of things we can do. Again, that's another hour. We could talk for an hour about it, but the primary impediment there is the Mexican government. Now, there's been some, I think, welcome changes there. The Mexican Senate recently voted to allow 10 more Special Forces soldiers into the country per year to train the Mexican Special Forces. That's double the amount previously allowed, so that's something. We need a lot more than that. There's also been some setbacks, though, that I'm worried about. I haven't gotten a good feeling on how Mexico actually has responded to an FTO designation. There was a leak about drones being used over Mexico. There was a story about that in the New York Times, maybe. That won't go over well with Mexico. So one of the things I worry about is now we're going to have less action than we've ever had before against the cartels. That's a real worry right now, and I plan on going to Mexico next month just to try and get a better feel for how that is going. But yeah, you basically have an insurgency, and I think that's the most accurate word to describe it, because an insurgency is integrated, it's a criminal organization that engages in terrorist activity when need be. It's engaged in government activity. It's engaged in lawful businesses. It's completely infiltrated into the society itself. It's an insurgency, and it's a major one with the largest budget in the world as far as insurgencies go. By far the most deadly and heinous criminals we've ever seen. ISIS wasn't the first to start beheading people on tape, right? That was the cartels a long time ago. ISIS took all their bad ideas from the cartels. That's how heinous they are. So it's something we have ignored for far too long, and frankly, it's not obvious to me that we've figured out yet what to do about it. But a lot of that is because Mexico has long stood in the way of American cooperation, and we have to figure out how to change that.
You mentioned the drone war in Ukraine, the possibility of shooting down missiles with cheaper technology. There are a lot of people in Silicon Valley and in Austin, where I live, who are working on what they call hard tech, trying to break open the defense contracting world to allow new technologies to get in. Is there anything that you're excited about or encouraged about there? Do you think there's still a massive bureaucracy, and how do you evaluate how Pete Hegseth does he have a good strategy or an encouraging strategy to deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's like the thing to fix in the DoD, and I have no idea how to fix it, and I haven't seen any strategy on how to fix it either. We've seen encouraging things in the sense that we've seen companies and figures like Joe Lonsdale kind of break the mold, break past the primes winning all the contracts mold. I'm not exactly sure how they did it. You'd have to bring somebody.
They sued
a
little bit. There were lawsuits involved.
Yeah, and it's probably, you have to have money to back that up to begin with, which he did, and so I don't know what the answer is. You'd have to be on somebody smarter than me to answer those, but it's one of our greatest challenges for sure. If we can't be nimble about choosing a company that does X action for us, we'll continue to fall behind. It's a problem.
We've talked about a lot of the threats, and in the minute we have left, what are you most hopeful for? What do you think people should be most optimistic about with what's going on in Washington, the country?
Well, you should always be optimistic no matter who's in charge, because it's really hard, just strategically and from a geopolitical standpoint, to crush America. It's just really difficult to screw up our country, no matter how hard we try and how many stupid decisions we make. That's a geography fact, which we're hard to invade, and we have our 51st state up top, and then we got our problems in Mexico, but it's not existential. None of it's ever existential. Our biggest competitor being China has got way larger problems than we do, demographically speaking, and as far as their debt leveraging and all that. And again, they industrialize, they engage in those kind of policies, but it's not obvious that they're really sustainable. So I just think, and then politically, we're just remarkably stable because it's our Constitution makes it very hard to get things done, which means makes it hard to get things undone. And the checks and balances, they just stop the system. And that's frustrating a lot, but it's also remarkably stabilizing. So it's hard to screw this place up, and I think that's a good thing.
Great. Well, Congressman Crenshaw, appreciate you being here. I know you're powering through the flu to make it out here, and we really appreciate you representing Congress for us. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Thanks again. See you soon. Yeah.